Hi, Asya here. Still enjoying theater without leaving my apartment and sharing my experiences with you. The good news is that you can stay in New York or whenever the shelter-in-place order found you and still visit a theater in Toronto, as long as you have a phone. As some of you know, I review theater for No Proscenium, the guide to everything immersive. My last assignment was a phone adventure called The Ministry of Mundane Mysteries by Outside the March, Toronto-based immersive theater company. In this interactive, improvised adventure, you get a series of 10-minute long phone calls over the duration of 6 days. Prior to the experience, you submit a mundane mystery to the ministry and you get an inspector assigned to your case. And your mystery is investigated during these daily phone calls where your inspector and a number of other characters interact with you, and your job is simply to provide honest information when called upon. Hello?
Hello, am I speaking with Asia?
Yes, that's me.
Is that how you pronounce your name, miss? I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries, it's Asya.
It's Asya. You know, I had a 50-50. Sorry, this is Inspector Currie calling you from the Ministry of Mundane Mysteries. I know that you've engaged the ministry to look into the case of the adjacent hot peppers.
Alright, I'm going to brief you quickly on the real-life mystery that I submitted to the ministry. I recently planted some hot pepper seeds, but only in this container. The other container, I didn't plant anything in it. I just used it for some extra soil that I had left. And now there is a mystery plant growing in it. So my little precious hot peppers became the focal point of my detective story. For further development, you could just head to the review. I will leave a link to it below the video. To summarize, without going into any details of my case, I must say that the Ministry of Mundane Mysteries was one of my favorite remote experiences so far. Flawlessly executed, fun, engaging, it won this critic's heart. So I simply had to meet with at least some of the creatives behind the Ministry of Mundane Mysteries. My guests today in my little Zoom studio are Shannon Currie, who plays Inspector Currie on my case and many others, and Mitchell Cushman, the artistic director of Outside the March. If you could tell a little bit about Outside the March for those who are not familiar with your company, and what kind of theater do you guys do?
So we're just wrapping up our 10th season as a company. We did our first production in 2010, and over the last 10 years, we've become one of Canada's leading immersive theater companies. So most of the work that we do is either site-specific and or immersive in some way. And one of our very first productions was a show in a kindergarten classroom. Since then, we've done work in a funeral home and in a couple church spaces, in some like people's living rooms, also some larger scale spaces. We did a show last summer called The Tape Escape that was set in a VHS video store, and we sort of turned it back into a 1990s video store, but it was an escape room experience. It featured 3 narrative-based escape rooms. And then we've done some work in traditional theater spaces as well, but kind of turning those spaces on their heads. So we felt like maybe we were somewhat uniquely placed to engage creatively with the COVID-19 moments. And a lot of the work we do is about trying to re-examine preconceptions of what a theater experience can entail. And in this case, we had to think about how to re-examine theater without live presence, which isn't something that had really occurred to us before, but is clearly the need of the moment. And so a number of artists came together, including our stellar cast featuring Shannon, among others, and to put together this experience. And it's been really fun offering it to people over the last 6 weeks.
So far, how the transition has been for you and the cast, the transitioning from site-specific to remote theater?
In some ways, it's been pretty similar to the process we've gone through in other shows, in that every one of our projects is just entirely different, and we really do try to adopt a non-formulaic kind of boutique approach to the different productions that we run. And so we're having to reinvent the wheel on this project, but in a way we reinvent the wheel on every project that we do, and try to come up with outreach and a marketing plan and an aesthetic that fits that individual project. So we've gone through that same unique process, I'd say, on this show, but obviously with a whole different set of variables. It's interesting to work on something that's so collaborative with a group of people who are to some degree scattered all across Canada, and a couple people working on the show I've never met in person before, but I now feel like I know pretty intimately, as you do when you work on a creation with people. Only, we've been doing this for 6 or 7 weeks all together now, but never been in the same room. So it's definitely a weird new normal.
I don't know some of my colleagues, as Mitchell was saying. I've never sat in the same room with them. I know them from our Zoom call. I know them from our texts, but we've never passed in the hallway. We've never given each other a hug. We've not done any of those theater things. But yet I love these people tremendously. Like, we get together on, Saturdays in the evening and jam it out, like, talk about, and I think it's really to debrief about the week. But for me, I mean, it's like family. It's wonderful to see all these people that I have the same connection to as if we shared a dressing room for 6 weeks, as if we had been in a rehearsal hall, for 3-4 weeks together. And I feel like that's the beauty of this project, is that to me, it transcends whatever the expectation of physical demands. There is the same listening, accountability, collaboration, and love in this medium, just as much as sharing a physical space with anyone.
What was the decision behind making it a phone experience as opposed to video call or any other platforms?
The fact that my internet continues to lag may be one answer to that question, but a different answer. A lot of our work is really around trying to create intimate connections between audience and performers, and we felt like the phone would be a better platform for that than video streaming. Video streaming can be great, and it's really good at connecting people, large groups of people. We're actually quite excited about creating work that can prompt conversation between small numbers of people, and it felt like the phone would actually be a better format for that. There's something quite intimate about speaking on the phone and knowing that you each have each other's full attention in that moment, and so it felt like the right platform.
What's the process of the creation of each story? Like, is it a case detective responsible for building it, or the director, or group of people? How does it usually happen?
There's an overall kind of approach that we've created collectively around how we're going to personalize each of these mysteries. But the general framework is that at the end of each call, if Shannon had just completed a call with you, she would then pass on a series of notes and ideas to the next person who would call you the next day, and that would inspire the next day's performance. So it is truly collaborative, and the protagonist of the story and the most important collaborator on each mystery is the audience member who's the client in that form. And whether they know it or not, it's really what they offer on the calls that is writing the story. Like, we have an audience member who's 99 this week, and we have a couple 4-year-olds and everything in between. So that's as broad of an age spectrum as you could imagine. And with that comes such a wealth of different kinds of calls. I am so impressed by Shannon and the other members of the cast, because every half an hour they're making a different phone call, and there's something completely different on the other end of the phone, and they have to just be able to roll with all of that in a way that I think requires some really nimble thinking.
Within one day, you can be the case of, like, why is my imaginary dragon behaving oddly? Right? To then suddenly being on the case of, like, a stranger, a random occurrence of, like, a stranger that you met who you see and you have no idea their story, or like a missing keepsake, a missing ring, a missing earring. You provide the mundanity, we provide a lot of the magic, which is that there's truly the beautiful storytelling, I think, from the entire group about taking what is mundane, what is everyday in some ways, and truly highlighting the beauty of everyday and the magic of imagination and personal connection, which I think is the resonance that makes all of these calls, mean something in the span of a week to an individual audience member.
Speaking about the kids, Ministry of Mundane Mysteries, I think, is like the only currently running experience that is for kids or kids friendly. Was it like specifically that something something that interested you from the beginning, Mitchell, or how did that come up?
A lot of our work is really lives in a sort of spirit of imagination and play that is rooted in trying to make adults feel like kids again. And I think that's kind of the spirit we went into this project with as well. But often the barrier with kids is always about content, and how can you engage with content that would be equally interesting to a 4-year-old as a 99-year-old. And in this case, each story is being told for an audience of one person or one household. So the content it's just so personalized that we can tailor one individual call to a 5 or 6-year-old, and another one to 2 middle-aged men who might call up, and then another one to a whole cross-generational family. I think it's that ability to tailor it that really has helped.
Shannon, when calling to adults and kids, do you find any difference in like the style of acting you need to apply?
With children, I try to keep it as far looser than maybe with adults, because they could have, they might want to chase an idea that then to me is just the joy of chasing that idea. And I guess the same is true with adults too. Like if an adult has a very strong idea of how they would like that call to go, if I'm sensing that, what I'm putting down is not how they'd like to pick it up, then we'll just change and we'll make it what's joyful for them. I sort of realized kind of early on in doing this project, particularly when we started getting into the ability to call 2 homes. So we would have like 2 sides of a family, or just families that are living apart who are now going to experience this call together. That highlighted the point to me that really it's not sometimes the mystery can take a second seat to play an imagination. Like ultimately, we're really here to give people joy in a time that is prone to anxiety or in times of unknown, and trying to bring people together. So if a family wanted to spend more time talking to each other than, getting behind whatever cornerstone we were turning on their mystery, then my instinct is to allow for that, because, they're following their joy, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
I assume when people sign up, they know that it's going to be highly interactive, but I wonder, how do you like ever encounter people who are shy and like don't want to speak, or people who can't shut up?
Well, I would never say can't shut up. I love that. I'm a chatterbox myself, so I'm very happy to just talk to people. It's a 2-way street, so I'm happy to take calls in my apartment too. I have no one else to talk to. I would say, like, again, it's just really leading from them. I think people, to some extent, for the majority, know what they're getting into. As in, I will be talked to for 10 minutes every day. I think maybe what is unknown is that, or what I find the joy, or what I hear on the other end sometimes, is that, at least as an inspector, I'll spend a good amount of time talking to people about the particulars of their mystery, but then really who they are and what they're interested in takes such another life in these calls that I think sometimes people, you butt up against someone's expectation of what this was going to be in those moments, whether that's good or bad. And I've never had anyone, recoil from divulging who they are, but I certainly will only go to where they want to go. Too. Nothing is incredibly personal in any way, but you can hear that someone says, well, what do my hobbies, what do my pastimes have to do with this clinking refrigerator? I have no idea how these 2 things are linked, and you just have to keep with the play of it, that somehow the mystery will be solved with something.
To me, one of the most rewarding parts about hearing about the experience from the actors and following along how different audience members are doing do you think there's a number of people who've done the experience who have ended it far less reserved than they began it? And why, I think in creating the cast for the show, one of the reasons we sought the skills of very intuitive and generous people like Shannon is that not only are they great actors and great improvisers, but they're really great listeners. And I think we're seeing how we're in a time where a lot of people are looking to have someone just really listen and someone to converse with. And on those Saturday calls, like at the end of the week, like there's been quite a few, I think, genuine personal or emotional connections that have been born out of those phone calls in these shared moments. And even though we're probably, maybe because these people will never speak to one another again, but they've experienced a connection through this somewhat silly framework. But like, I think through that sort of whimsy, feels like there's a pathway to something more genuine being born.
And maybe I just want to chime in with one more thing. Like Azia, I feel like I know you. Like, I mean, I don't know if that feels, I only mean that in the nicest way, but I mean, like, like when we got on the call before this started, I wanted to be like, and how's your partner? Like, how's the photography going? Like, what have you guys made for dinner lately? Are you working up to getting that hot sauce? Like, there's a lot of stuff that I now know about people that is truly innocent knowledge, but that sort of those specific sort of things that friendship and connection come from. I don't know how you felt on those calls when, because we were talking about your mystery plant, but then, you, if I may, I know a couple things about you. So I don't know how your experience was of talking about that or letting the mystery go in other directions from just your mystery plant.
Well, I definitely felt like talking to a friend, and I remember starting it, well, with an open mind, certainly, because I do a number of interactive experiences, but I am not a huge fan of talking over the phone. So I started maybe a little bit, tense, but immediately, like, for your second sentence, and like I was already so into it, and like the way you set it up and the way you held the conversation, it immediately felt very, comforting and friendly, and I fell in love with that character. She was so great, and like when she got in trouble, I was like,
oh yes, I remember. Yes.
So yeah, it does feel, it creates this very real connection, even though you are in character and the participant is, for the most part, themselves. I wonder if like makes you feel like a therapist or something.
Sometimes, some calls, but you know what? It also like makes me think. Sometimes I haven't yet gone for a full binge of Love Is Blind. But I truly understand the premise of that show. Like, I mean, there is something that is more intimate about hearing someone versus seeing them. When you take away what they look like or all those sort of visual distractions, I mean, the ability to listen to someone, I find it all the more heightened. Like I retain so much more as a listener. In my personal life, I quite love talking on the phone, because it doesn't involve the external as much as I feel like we live in a kind of an externally judged world. So to kind of strip that all down to just conversation, I do feel like I know people, and I hear things that maybe they don't want me to hear, or you wouldn't want to show to someone. But the minute that you get on the phone with them, I mean, a lot of stuff just starts pouring out. It's kind of that trope of talking to a stranger at a bar. You're more open to, I think, talking about all kinds of things. And yeah, there are some calls where it's been interesting. Like, I do feel like people tell me things that they didn't expect to tell me.
I think Shannon ultimately got at like kind of why we picked the phone and why we structured the project in this way. It's because it feels like theater. Like it feels the same as the other work that we've been doing in a way that I think doing a video stream wouldn't necessarily. And those Saturday night hangouts that we've been having with the cast afterwards feel akin to like going to the bar after a long week of rehearsals. Like every aspect of it actually does feel like oddly similar to a lot of the other collaborations that we've done, down to the fact that all the artists, especially the performers, are giving so much of themselves to the project. And that is really, I think that's what is keeping it vibrant 6 or 7 weeks into the show. Yeah. We've now expanded to a cast of 13, and which means that we have the ability for certain actors to take a week off, because it's pretty demanding, the work. But Shannon's one of the few actors who every week I'm like, do you want to take a week off? And they don't seem to want to, I think, because the project is really offering something, I imagine.
Yeah, you 100% echo that. I mean, it's like I always write in my gratitude journal of for me to divulge it is this project. I mean, it's great to have to let our minds can spiral during this time, probably those with very active imaginations and even those without. And I think it's beautiful to keep the human and humane in mind all the time. And I mean, there are calls that I need just as much as I think other people do.
Mitchell, but in terms of the format, would you be interested in doing anything remote again? Or are you just going to do it as long as it's necessary because of physical distancing?
I don't know that we ever would have thought to do this project in pre-COVID times, or that there would have been the audience interest in it, but I would have been as interested in the project. Like, I think there's something that's fundamentally, it's true to itself in a way that it doesn't feel like any kind of limitation or apology. It feels like it's a project that's playing out exactly in its right form and its right medium. And I think this piece has maybe reminded me of some of the immediacy and power of audio and of one-on-one experience. And I think those principles will absolutely carry through in other projects that we do. I don't know, we've pledged to continue to do running the ministry as long as social distancing is in place. But honestly, like, we're all having so much fun doing it. We'll probably keep doing it as long as there's an interest in us doing it. And I think all theater makers are learning a lot during this moment that is going to inform their future work. Hopefully in a way, like, it will make us really appreciate the power of live presence. And like, I'm very hungry and excited to get back into a physical room with actors and a physical room with audience, for sure. But I also think there's great learning things that we're taking from this period that I also hope we carry along. There's a lot of unfortunate things about this moment, to say the least, but I think one of the fortunate or positive things about this time is it's never felt like borders and boundaries matter less. So like, the fact that we're able to share this project with people across the States, and we're investigating how to do it internationally, that's been one of the most exciting things about this. So yeah, thanks for attending.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh, last question. How many mysteries do you currently investigate in a given run?
We're doing about 50 a week, so we've done over 300 of them. 300 cases closed.
That's
100% success rate.
There is no mystery too mundane for the Ministry of Mundane Mysteries.
If you're looking for highly skilled professionals to investigate your mundane mystery, you know where to go. www.mundanemysteries.com. And don't forget to check out noproscenium.com for regular updates on everything that's going on in the world of immersive entertainment. Keep your sense of wonder engaged. Till next time.